Beyond the Wrench with Jay Goninen from Find a Wrench.
All right. Really excited for today's show. Welcoming Jody DeVere from AskPatty.com. Jody, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you, Jay?
Really good. I'm this podcast is going to be fun. Jody and I have had multiple conversations prior to this podcast. Love everything that Jody's doing, and I think just really have a good rapport with Jody. So this will be a lot of fun. And so, Jody, for those of our guests or our listeners that don't know AskPatty.com, can you give us kind of an idea of what AskPatty.com is?
Yes, of course. So Ask Patty is in her 17th year, and it's really threefold. One, we provide automotive advice and educational article content for consumer women. We also train and certify automotive retailers, auto shops, dealerships, quick lubes, tire dealers, parts departments, on how to communicate effectively with women. And we also act as the marketing agency for our clients to help them resonate better to women and families in their marketing. And just recently, we launched additional training, which is called Upshift training, which revolves around leadership, culture, and workforce. And that's where we connected, because we are also helping our clients attract, develop, and retain more automotive technicians.
And we could all use more of those, right? So that works out well.
Yeah.
So how, and this is something that's not new to you, right? You've been around the industry for a minute.
21 years. 21 years. In fact, almost 22, and my entire career, with the exception of the first literal few months, has all revolved around the women's market in some way. And the last 5 or 7 years, I've also focused very heavily on bringing more women into the industry, including female technicians, and developing their careers and developing more leaders. I also co-own another company, the Women in Automotive, which these two things work hand in hand, which doesn't say, I never say you have to have a woman working in your shop to be female friendly, but it sure helps. And most shops that I talk to all say, we want to hire more women. They don't apply for the jobs. And this is something we help our clients with. And overall, I've become a bit of a spokesperson for women in the industry and also the women's market. And I hope today the listeners get some helpful tips on how to improve and grow their market share with women.
And based on our conversations, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think you're going to give them plenty of good nuggets to go home with. So that's good. So tell me, before we get into the subject at hand, tell me about how you got into the industry in the first place and really found that niche. What was your upbringing and what led you to this point?
So I have a long story, so I won't tell you the whole story because, I'm getting up there. But I grew up in the San Fernando Valley. I like to tell people that, which in those days, it was a huge car culture. In fact, there was a Chevy plant in Van Nuys, California. And yeah, I was the girl that cut the boulevard and on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. And my dad, who was an engineer, an aerospace engineer, did all the repairs on our Chevy. And I was the daughter, the youngest of 4 daughters, who was under the car with him, handing him the tools. And I just grew up that way. Fast forward, I actually spent 30 years in high tech and came to the automotive industry. I've sort of been a serial entrepreneur, and I came to the auto industry because I had grown weary of the short intervals for product life cycle. And many of my friends in the industry had gone to automotive because at that point in time, and this is around 2000, vehicles were starting to have onboard computers and more electronics or technology. And so I was a good fit. And I did some consulting and ended up, no woman, unless they grow up in Detroit or grow up in a family, we usually come by accident to automotive, right? But I definitely have a great love of vehicles. In fact, I love motorsports. I'm a very active off-road Jeeper. And so, I'm a very adventurous kind of person in that way. So I had started a consulting business in automotive, and I met up with some folks, and it actually happened at SEMA that I had this brainstorm that, wow, there's such a disconnect between the automotive retail and women consumers and how they're communicating. And as a serial entrepreneur, what you want to do to be successful is close the gap or solve a problem that's happening in an industry, perhaps in a way that hadn't been thought about. And that's what inspired AskPatty.com. And no, Patty is not my daughter, aunt, or grandma. Everybody asks that question, so I'm giving it to you preemptively. It was really kind of a random thing, but coincidentally, and remember, I have a heavy technology background. When Patty launched, Ask.com was a really hot property at that time. And putting Ask and Patty together, within the first year, we were featured on the front page of the New York Times business section.
Wow.
And we came on the scene and just exploded because it was the right time and the right way to go to market. So, so here we are many years later and still working on closing that gap.
How did you come up with the name Patty then? Because I will say my mom's name is Patty, and I think she's probably, I don't know if she's aware of the website yet, but I'm going to make sure she is. And she's going to say, that should have been a thing dozens and dozens of years ago, because you could just ask her and she would know. No.
All right. No, it was random. I mean, some of the discussions were Ask Jody. But as a serial entrepreneur, one of the things you don't want to do is name your business after yourself.
Yeah.
I know a lot of shop owners do that because it's really hard to sell it with your name on it. Although Patty, I have owned Ask Patty the longest of any of my many successful and some failed companies over the years. Still very passionate. Still a lot of room to grow. And very often when I'm interviewed on TV or radio, I'm referred to as Patty, and I call that good branding. She's iconic.
It is really, really hard to make sure that you're making sure that you're doing the right name. So that's I give you a lot of credit for that. Great brand. And what you're doing is really, really impactful. I think at the core of it, that this is something that needs to change in our industry. I think it has, slowly evolved. I think we're getting closer, but that really brings us to our topic of the day, which is really being able to provide advice to shops on becoming female friendly, and maybe even ways to identify whether you are female friendly already, or if you think you are, but you're really not. I think when we dive into this conversation, our initial conversation, it opened my eyes to some things. And in growing up in a shop, that was something that I think I look back at my time in a shop and I was like, whoa, maybe I wasn't as female friendly as I thought I was, or as accommodating, or as respectful, and not that I was ever degrading, I don't feel like, but I think there's always room to improve with this. And I want to start with that, is being able to understand that, where are you in your path of being female friendly when it comes to a shop? And maybe to start with, what do you see with shops? Like, what do you see? Do they have an accurate depiction of who they are when it comes to how they deal with females?
So, first of all, every shop, depending on their demographic and where, their local market, I believe all shops pretty much want to deliver great customer service. So I don't think, without question, because they want their customers to come back. What I am about is giving them a strategic advantage with women who statistically are about 73% of service customers in today's market, and influence 85% of those decisions, whether they're married or not. And one of the things that I know, because we've worked with thousands of shops and dealerships, is to start asking yourself some questions. Do I actually know how many women are my customers versus men? Because if those statistics are true, my customer base of women should be higher. I should be seeing more women coming in. And most people don't track that. The other thing that's really easy information to get your hands on is the demographics of your local market. Well, what's the total available market of women for me in my market that I could have as clients? What are their age? How much money do they make? Are they married? Are they single? And then look at my customers currently and say, wow, there's so much opportunity in other areas. And I like to say women and families, because she kind of brings that along. And so these are some questions that you may not think to ask or look into to see. Everyone's looking to grow their business, and you need to understand the total available market of women in your local market, or if you're a multi-location in all your markets, and then see where the gaps are, and then come up with a plan to start attracting and bringing and their needs, understand their needs. So it goes without saying, and this is for me too, that the woman's market from a consumer point of view is extremely complex. And so I don't think shop owners are delving into that and keeping in touch, not like I do, because that's my job. That's what people come to me for. And so we extend that knowledge to our clients. We have had clients with us almost 15 years, 16 years. So why, if they're already certified female friendly, do they keep coming back? Because the evolving market, it's not about a one time and done. It's about evolving with the women's marketing, staying current with the subtle ways to have conversation with her, subtle ways to market to her. And so I think this is some of the areas that, when you make assumptions, I do not ever state that I know everything about the women's market, ever. That's arrogant, because I'm learning all the time. I have to go to the experts in that market, and that may be in and out of, mostly out of automotive. Yeah. Because our industry, and I'll make one of the statement, and it's just, I am all in support of this industry. I'm all in. However, there's a huge gap, as well as the number of women working in the industry. Currently, it's at 26.2%, and that's all women working in all roles, including at automakers, aftermarket parts, dealerships. At dealerships, it's a little lower. In the aftermarket, with the shop owners, many are owned by a husband-wife, so you have that advantage of having that point of view. And so it creates this testosterone-laden language and thinking that creates a gap. So we talked about this yesterday, and I'll shoot it back to you after this statement. So curious thing, women speak approximately 20,000 words a day. And thank you, Jay. I get to have a bonus today. I'll probably get 30 or 40 because of this podcast. And how many words a day do you think men speak a day on average?
I think my guess was half, and I was high.
You're high. It's 3,000 to 4,000. And so I want you to marinate on that, listeners. So this is a gap in communication. If she's talking a lot and you're talking a little, how do you close the gap in communication? And how it plays out in the shop sometimes is she's standing at the counter and you're trying to write the RO to get her in and get it done. But she wants to tell you every story. She loves her vehicle, so she doesn't want to just talk about this incident and repair, but she wants to tell you the last three and then she starts getting into every car she loved and owned. And you're like feeling frustrated. And that's the vibe you're giving off because you just want to fix her problem. So how do you handle these general gaps in communication and make it a win-win and ensure that she is having a great experience and that you have earned her loyalty? So
how do you, so there's a general understanding that just based on what you're saying, and I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly, that a female is going to talk more than a male, right? Like just in just human nature. How, from a male's perspective, can you almost train yourself to one, understand that and then adapt to that? Like, what is maybe a good way to combat that? I think I'm guilty of this where I'm like, go, go, go all the time, always in a rush. So being able to slow down and make sure you're listening and not pretending like you're listening, but really you're on to the next thing in your head. How do you do that?
Well, it's definitely a discipline, and we all need to be better listeners. I mean, this is not just a male, female, but in context of the ability to provide an experience for a woman customer is to be fully present. So first of all, you need to put your cell phone away. You can't be glancing at your phone and talking. One of the things that helps that I train is to make eye contact. It's really hard to be distracted when you're having appropriate, I don't mean staring her down, but appropriate eye contact. And the other suggestion that I have, and we run into this a lot too, where even listening is about when you answer the phone. And it's kind of the way some shops just have their operations, where the service advisor, the person who is working the counter, also is responsible for answering the phones. So even my staff, as we're calling clients, sometimes we'll get this, "Hi, this is John saying, can you hold on me?" You're like, well, why was he yelling at me? And why did he kind of hang up on me? And so I think one way to help the service advisor be more present for all clients, but especially women, is that they're also not responsible for handling the phone in, and that you have that, especially in the morning, because usually that's when people are coming in and getting their vehicles in for the day, and in the afternoon, and, phone handling and giving the service advisor as owners the opportunity to be present for every client. Especially women. Those are some tips, good eye contact. And also we provide training, but I got to say, it's not one and done. We also provide ongoing training, again, because it's evolving. And these are things that you need to have. We do monthly webinars, and we have a lot of content, and we work with our clients because, especially when they have new people and onboarding and getting them sort of in the swing of how that is. So these are disciplines that you need to practice. And the last thing I would say is we get a lot of feedback when our clients start practicing these new skills and they have such great results. That's why you keep doing it. When you get the results you want, really happy customers, great reviews. And in today's market, it used to be in the olden days that a woman would tell 10 of her friends who would tell 10 of her friends. Well, guess what? Now we have social media, and she can literally be sitting in your waiting room, Twittering and Facebooking and Instagramming and TikToking her experience with you. And she has a lot more influence today in real time than ever before as well.
So this is something that I found really interesting out of our prior conversations when we were prepping for the podcast was there might be some psychology behind maybe that awkward interaction between a male and a female in general. And, as I thought about it, I was like, you know what? It kind of goes back to like when you're kids and if maybe a little boy had a crush on a little girl or something like that and was like, they were super awkward and not saying like that's the relationship that we see here, but more so that, the context of how it feels sometimes where there's just almost like an awkwardness in general with somebody, then, and I use that analogy because I think it almost feels like that translates when we get older too, to where it's hard to get around that part, or really maybe hard for some people to not be awkward in that situation, and really trying hard to not be awkward. And then I think they put so much pressure on themselves that they make it even more awkward. But do you see that at all? And
Yes.
are you, I mean, is that an accurate comparison, or is that just kind of outlandish and in
No.
left field?
In fact, I'll share something that happened to me. I buy cars too, and I was in a car buying situation. I won't tell the whole story, but let's fast forward. And now I'm in the F&I office, where you're signing all the paperwork. And I had called a male friend to meet me at the dealership, so he could help me clean out my car, and we were going to go out to dinner and celebrate. Woohoo! New vehicle. And when he arrived, he came into the F&I office and sat down next to me. And immediately, the F&I guy stopped looking at me and talking to me and started talking to him a lot. And of course, he knew it's not like I announced, I'm Ask Patty, so you better behave yourself. I just want to see what's going to happen. And my friend, John, is his name, kind of rolled his eyes and went, you better start talking if you're going to lose his deal. And afterward, I had an epiphany about that what happened in that little vignette, he was just more comfortable talking to John than he was to me. Let's think about this. In most shops, it's almost all men. It's not as rare, but it's pretty rare to have a lot of women working in automotive repair shops. Again, it's a very testosterone-laden environment, and that comes with a culture that's automatic about guy talk and and all the things that go with that. And then you have women coming in, and you have to change gears. So I think it comes from perhaps because you're spending so much time in this male testosterone-laden environment, that it's hard to switch gears and attune yourself that this is a consumer women, and some of those behaviors need to be set aside. I'll give another example. Most of the guys are going to nod their heads. Men, when they get together in a social environment, do what I call side talking. They don't pull their chairs around in a circle and talk to each other face to face. They sit side by side and they kind of, hey, no eye contact at all. And these are norms. I'm not saying everyone does that all the time, but it's a norm. You do that in the shop. You're not sitting down having intimate conversations. If you go to a social event, the next social event you go, and I know during COVID, these are rare, but even at a family event, the women will all sit together and they'll turn their chairs toward each other so they can have full-on contact. The men will, and so again, I think it's the information that you need to kind of relax and make a friend, and help you understand that these are what I call unconscious behaviors that may not be doing you very well in an environment where you're trying to take care of a female customer.
That resonates so much with me, and my family is so much that way. We just we were down at my grandparents' place, and the analogy when you said that, painted a picture for me, and I'm like, oh my goodness, we did this exact same thing for the 4th of July. We had all the guys go out into like the sunroom and have the baseball game on, and we're all sitting like kind of in a like next to each other, almost shoulder to shoulder, and all of the women are around the kitchen table, and they're all as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh my goodness, that is so true.
So, and I want to just say a couple things that will maybe rub people, but again, I'm here to help you. I've talked to thousands of shop owners at this point, and sometimes they'll justify, well, I'm female friendly, I'm married, and I have 3 daughters. I know all about, I've got it down with women. And I'm not buying that, guys. I'm just not buying it. That is not knowledgeable of the women's market, which is complex. That's your family. And by the way, I think my training helps in communicating effectively with all women. It could help you, but that's not being female friendly. That's an excuse to do the hard work, because it is work. Any new skill requires effort and time. And again, with the amount of influence that she has in purchasing decisions as it relates to repairs and parts, and she is getting more knowledgeable. But the truth is, we still, on Ask Patty, we take questions from women, are still getting, when is my oil change? When do I need my brakes replaced? Simple things that are in the manual. No consumer reads that manual, by the way. They've even tried to video it. Nobody reads it. But women come to you, most consumer women, feeling defensive because they know they're not knowledgeable about this, and they know they don't understand your language. And to be honest, unfortunately, our industry still has that malaise on it that we take advantage of women. And I say we because I believe I'm part of that. I'm here to help solve that. And so understanding some of these nuances help you develop a better culture overall and help you communicate more effectively. And some of the training is about body language. Some of it is about verbal communication, the telephone, marketing, how you market. Another tip, go look at your website. If there's parts and men and all this stuff all over your website, well, that's your brochureware nowadays. Where's the reflection of I belong in this environment in your brand presence online? And so these are just some subtle ways that send really strong signals to women that you are female friendly in terms of your overall environment.
I love that. I think, that's something we've promoted on the WrenchWay side. And I don't talk about WrenchWay a whole lot on the podcast, but that was one thing that I thought was important. And maybe we segue into a female in the workplace and how that looks. We've promoted a lot with, we're very big on video, but having a woman on their WrenchWay page talking about what it's like to work there and their experience in working there, so that they can attract, one of the big things that we always talk about is how difficult it is to find technicians. And based on the stats that you had said, and I think there's an industry stat as well, that 1% of all technicians are female.
It's under 2%.
Yeah,
it's a good on the wall.
It's insane. But when we're looking for good help, and I think being able to, marketing to a consumer is a big thing, but then being able to really, make sure you are a good place and you are female friendly, so that when you do put that female on camera, that she says stuff glowingly about your operation. But maybe talk to me a little bit about that. If you've got a female employee in a shop setting, you mentioned it earlier, where a lot of times it can be very testosterone driven. What are opportunities that you see to make a shop more female friendly, and maybe to turn that 1% into, 25% or 30%? I think aspirationally, that's something I want to see out of industry, is to get more females in and make them comfortable when they're there. Any suggestions on how a shop can, one, kind of look at how female friendly they truly are? And when I say that, probably more so to their employee side, their internal team. How do
Yeah.
what do you see there?
So I have a saying: if a woman is not comfortable being your customer, being your customer, she's not going to want to work there. Yeah. So that's why I have worked on both sides, bringing both sides together, because that goes hand in hand with I have a lot of information about women technicians, because I support several organizations, including the Tech Force Foundation, who has a program. You'll find my videos, and Bogey Latina, and the All Girl Garage, and all these things. And one thing that's kind of disturbing for me, because I've also done that, where I go to all the high schools and I talk to the women who are in the remaining auto shop programs to try and encourage them to complete and get them placed. I've had some success. But what I often hear from these young aspiring female technicians is that nobody will hire them. And they get this response: you don't fit into our environment. Or basically, even the teachers have called me and said, I don't understand it. She's our top student. I can't give her the job. And the reason is no. And I wouldn't bring it up if it was a one-time thing. This is like a trend. It's very frustrating. So there's a gap there that somehow the owners have concerns about sexual harassment, or they have concerns about, I don't want to make the necessary accommodation changes. We've been doing it. I don't know about the guys here. And I'm being really open here and just saying, if that's kind of how you're feeling, well, you really need a major adjustment in your culture overall. If you can't retain it, women employees, or make them comfortable in the front or the back. And, women are great listeners, actually. They make excellent service advisor, front counter folks. And you do not have to hire someone with automotive background, someone who works in retail with great customer service experience. By the way, I'd like to recommend young people who have worked at Starbucks. They provide a tremendous amount of training, believe it or not. And they make more money the more training they take, and they make great front people. You can also have them go through the ASE Service Advisor certification so that they can wear the patch, so that they feel more qualified and they represent more qualified to your customers. And so I think that again, we're talking about a bigger issue than just hiring. We're talking about you got to take a look at your culture. And are you coming of age in the developing market that is more inclusive and is culture matters? Consumers, especially women, make their choices not just on price, but on who you are in the community. How do you represent? What are you known for, other than the fact that you repair vehicles? And I want to add this too, that millennials and women have a lot of things in common. And there's a lot of debate about, how difficult it is to hire millennials, that they want to feel like the work that they're doing is making a difference. And we help our clients understand how to develop that to give meaning to their work, other than just get a paycheck, do your job. And this is work for the owners to look at a sort of a broader picture of their business and how they will be sustainable and successful and in growth mode. Times have changed. The needs of employees have changed. There is a hiring crisis in our industry overall. Yet there are many people out of work. So there stop, look, choose. They want to choose the right job for them, which can be very frustrating.
One of the things that you said there struck a chord with me with the top student being a female and struggling to find a job, and that's something that drives me absolutely insane. I don't know why you wouldn't want to bring a smart person that works hard at things into your operation, regardless of age, sex, color. Like if they're good, to me, it starts at the leadership level, that you need to be setting the tone for what everybody else perceives it as in the company. And I think that there's just so much frustration from my end that if you start off by cutting off 50% of the human race is 50% female, and you're just discounting that they can't do the job, no wonder we're in a hiring crisis. I think there's so many talented ladies out there that can do the job, do the work. I've seen it firsthand. I've hired female technicians, and one of the interesting things, and I'd be curious to pick your brain on this, is that in the female techs that I've hired for me personally, one of the things that I saw was almost an awkwardness in the shop, but it was from the guys in the shop trying to overdo it. Right? They were trying to over accommodate, and it was so surprising to me that was a thing. But it was almost like a fish out of water almost. And I think a lot of times when I would sit down and talk to the female technicians, they would say, "Listen, I just want to be treated like a technician. Like, I don't, male, female, I don't care, whatever." But everybody else would change how they acted so much when, there's one particular instance that I can remember when she was around, and it was such a weird dynamic. Like, it was just like you would have these really hardened, maybe baby boomer aged person just kind of not know how to act. And you're like, just calm down. Like, it's all right. Like, she's a person. Like, you don't have to act any different. Try to maybe clean up some of the language and do some of that. But at the end of the day, when I would sit down and talk to the female techs, they would just tell me that, like, you know what? I just want to be treated like another tech. Like, don't like,
that's right.
Try to overdo it here. Do you see that too?
Yes. And so this is, I hope I'm explaining it right, but so in your personal life and how the culture that you hold within yourself about women, let's not talk about work here, your culture, your values, and how you view women comes into your workplace with you. And some of that may not be appropriate. Like, don't open the door for your female employee. You're there to work. This is called, this is equity. We're being equals here now. And so some of the training that you have internally from both male and female needs to be modified in the work environment for things to run smoothly, for communication, definitely with respect. Don't call me baby, sweetheart, honey. This is and so I think that people owners of the shop need to understand the internal views of women, of their employees, as they bring women into the workplace. And I've heard the same thing. They just want a job. They know they're going to be working with a bunch of guys. Nobody's fooling them. They know that they're a great minority, but they just want to do their job. And they want it to be equal. I want to back up and say, though, because these are, this value system, this internal culture that you bring with you into the workplace about women also relates to just the workforce in general, about our industry. It is no longer true that you just need to steal the tech from the other shop and keep going. And and I think I would like to say very strongly that if you want to bring women in, whether they're technicians or service advisors, you have to have a plan. You need to, in other words, you need to create a pipeline that you're actually having a plan of where to recruit these people, how to develop them, and how to bring them up into your shop and provide the training, instead of this whole quick fix thing. And if it doesn't work out in 30 days, on to the next. It's not working for the industry anymore. And this is one of the reasons there's such a shortage of technicians. And I think shop owners, if they cannot or do not have the time because they're working on the business, in the business instead of on the business, if you know what I mean,
Yep.
then they need to get help from people like Ask Patty or WrenchWay or other resources to help them with the part of that employment pipeline that they need to do on an ongoing basis to continue to have exceptional employees.
Yeah, and that's we're both passionate about that and banging that drum, because I think that, you know, that mentality that, you know, I'm just going to grow my own and, you know, that's great, but it's not like, if you just say you're going to grow your own and don't actually take any action toward doing anything differently, you're going to end up in the same spot, and you're going to get more and more frustrated as this becomes worse and worse and worse. And that's where, you know, the culture of being a good place to work at. And I think that goes hand in hand with being female friendly, right? Is like, if you're a good place to work at and you've got good people there to start with, and even if they're all male and you're trying to bring in your first female into the shop, or a different female, whatever it might be. I hear what you said earlier, and I heard what you said earlier, where, you know, there maybe a shop owner is worried about some type of misconduct in a shop because there's a female in the shop.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably, to me, speaks more about the people in the shop already than it does, you know, like, I think that's where, when we say you have to have a good shop, a good place to work at, that's not just shops, business in general. You have to have a good business and a good environment in order to bring any new person in, but to have the confidence that when you bring that female in, that you've got leadership in the shop that can take care of that person and make sure that they're growing and make sure that they're getting the training that they need and the tooling that they need, right? And like being able to, you know, again, not even really female specific, but having tooling in the shop where they can lift heavy stuff. Anybody can lift, like, where, you know, you see so many 50, 60-year-old techs right now that their bodies are breaking down. And this has been happening forever, right? Like I remember I worked with an older gentleman up in northern Wisconsin at one point, and he would brag about like how when he was younger, he would lift a 350 short block into a car without using a cherry picker. And I'm like, one, super impressive. You're very strong. But two, very stupid, because you're gonna pay for that someday. And so, you know, I think that's where it comes down to me, if you have a good place to work at, hopefully that is conducive to having a female friendly establishment. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think what we're talking about now is the core pieces of your business. And I always like to say, ask your business owner, ask yourself the question, whether you realize it or not, you have created a culture in your business. What does that consist of? What is the culture of my business? Is it a growth culture? Is it a control? What is the culture? And just even sitting down and asking yourself that question and getting some support to sort of work, well, what kind of culture do we have now? What have we created here? And what kind of culture would I like to have? Would I prefer, or what would be better for growth or for employee retention or for sustainability? There are a lot of pressures on shop owners as vehicles. You know, now we have all these electric vehicles and we have all these different mandates. And depending on what part of the country, I'm in California, there's a lot of more and more rules around that. So there's a lot of competing things that are happening with business owners on the decision making. So perhaps they're not spending enough time talking about culture and employment and looking at the mix of their employees and understanding how that will impact the bottom line, the ROI of the business. I want to get back on point on the female friendly thing is that, I will always state you do not have to have women working in your business to be female friendly. That is not a requirement. It does help. It is helpful if it's the right woman. I've even we train the women too in Ask Patty, and they go, oh my gosh, I've been just like the guys. I got to change my evil ways. Seriously. And so I think it's a commitment to understanding and continuing to understand the flexes and how the women's market is responding and how I can be responsive. COVID, we're still in the middle of it, was a great example. How do I address the safety concerns of moms? And, how all these things emotional intelligence became very critical during this time for business owners, for their people, and for their customers. And so the female friendly is not a one and done brand. Yes, you get to bear that seal if you've been to my training, but it is an ongoing experience to develop excellent culture, retain employees, and serve the most influential customer that you have, which are women, in your business. And that growth, I've seen tremendous growth. And I'll just note one customer of mine, I won't say their name, but they're a large multi-location. Prior to becoming part of my program, we did a study to find out exactly what percent were their customers. It was 40%. And within 2 years, working with us, it was 72%. And it has maintained that. They have been my customer now for 12 years. Wow. Because they're evolving. They're staying with the women's market. They're growing with the changes in the market. And I want to state for the record that female friendliness and employment and culture is an ongoing commitment. It's not a one and done thing.
I love that. One, kudos to you on getting that transition. I mean, that's a hard thing to do, to go, especially with that drastic of a percentage change. So if you're a shop, and we're kind of, I think, about 10 minutes from closing this out, but if you're a shop and you want to look at some ways to, one, analyze where you're at, I think you gave them some homework right off the bat with understanding your demographic and understanding how much of your customer base is female. But say you do that, and a shop understands that there's a financial impact of this as well, but they sit down and they say, okay, I want to put together a game plan of how do I become a female friendly shop. How does somebody go about that? Obviously, Ask Patty is a great resource, and I'd encourage any of you that are out there and have listened to the podcast and loved what Jody said to head out there and check it out. She's got some fantastic resources out there. What's a good way to really start putting together a plan?
Well, I think getting feedback. And so one thing that would be great, and this would not be a member of your family or a woman working, is to reach out to maybe 10 of your female customers and give them a checklist of things and invite them to come to the shop and do not necessarily a mystery shop, but just criteria like, I mean, I don't want to talk about the bathrooms, but it is important.
Very important.
What I call the curb appeal, the look and feel in the exterior and how things are. Like, what women's magazines do you have in the waiting room? I went to visit a client before they became my client. It was in a metropolitan area, very executive level area. And they had a lot of women's magazines, many copy of Soap Opera Times. And I was quite offended. It's like, really, you think that's what all of us women do? We sit around and watch soap operas, eat bonbons, and read Soap Opera Times. And they had track and field and, all these. And I'm like, this is an area where mostly these are working women. I was really quite offended. They changed which magazines they're,
Wow.
based on their demographic. So having women give their input and talk about and this would not be reviews. Obviously, online reviews are a great way to get feedback, but this would be, and we actually provide our clients some criteria for that to happen. And then, and even reward them, say, if you'll do this, we'll give you a gift card or a free oil change. We really are trying to improve our results with women. And it's eye-opening, and I think owners and employees get so used to their environment and what's going on. They need that external feedback to make improvements. And so that's a really good start. Well, how would a woman want it? A small thing, putting 2 hooks on the back of the bathroom door.
Purse. Yes.
So you can put your purse and your coat, right? To keep them off the floor. No woman wants to put her purse on the floor. Small. Do you know, I'm just going to give you a for instance, because I love to give little tips. So
yeah.
What you can say you're really female friendly in subtle ways. Like you could put a sign on the back of the bathroom door, whether it's for men or women, and say, if you need spare diapers, we have them behind the counter. Or if you need feminine products, unless you're putting it there, we have them behind the counter. It happens where there's an emergency situation or someone, their vehicle's towed in for whatever reason, and they need to change their diaper. Just putting the sign up, even if you never have to, do have those products available, even if you never do it, sends really strong message to women. Wow, how thoughtful. And also for fathers who may have to change the dirty diaper, And so I think what we're talking about is a lot of subtle ways to build your female-friendly presence. And we don't have time to talk today about your brand presence, your market presence, but there's a lot of work to do, but it's really worth it, right? Yeah. The bottom line is women customers are more loyal than men customers. This is statistically. She goes to the same manicurist, same person to get her hair done, same market. And even if you have a problem, she is more willing to work through it with you if you're willing than men do. And so once you have earned her trust and loyalty, you've got a lifetime customer. A, B, positive word of mouth to her friends and family for you.
Use those 20,000 words to shed in a positive light, right? That's exactly. that's the goal. Well, I really appreciate you being on the podcast, taking the time out of your day. You're definitely very busy, and we really, really genuinely appreciate everything that you had to share with us today. Appreciate what you're doing for the industry as a whole. I think it's very noble and just cool. I love what you're doing and love what you're putting out there.
Thank you, Jay, and same to you. I think WrenchWay is doing great things to educate and help our industry close the gap with the technician shortage. So, in terms of what we're doing, we're both trying to change an industry culture to be more, let's all get into the real times and the real issues and solve those together. So I appreciate our friendship, and thank you for having me today. It's an honor.
Thank you, Jody. One last thing. How do people get in touch with you if they want to reach out and maybe help their shops become more female friendly?
I'm a very public figure. You can email me at jdevere@askpatty.com. You can visit askpatty.com and click on Get Certified. You can also visit our new training site by visiting askpattytraining.com. A lot of information there. And my cell phone number is 805-208-1008. I have an open door policy. Would love to talk to you and help you develop a female-friendly culture to win with women.
One of the best out there. I appreciate it, Jody, and hope you'll join us on the podcast again.
Absolutely. Have a great day.